So as it turns out, I've been reviewing these little plastic playthings for a long time, and when you do that, sometimes what you've done in the past kinda gets muddled in your head, and that leads to some interesting situations, like being in the mood to review an animated toy and realizing I've already reviewed most of them across various series. So I'm left with precious few pickings to actually cover new ground with, but there are still a few that we can look at here on Random Review, and that's what today is all about. Meet Elite Guard Bumblebee, the repaint of the Deluxe, where Bumblebee is basically cosplaying as a elite soldier. Well, you can't fault Bumblebee for being hopeful, can you? As you can see, it is molded almost completely in black in this mode, with just a little bit of yellow showing through here and there, exposing some of his future robot mode bits. But for the most part, the black is dominant, with only the gold breaking it up, and a very nice shade of gold. Again, it's a darker gold than I'm normally accustomed to seeing, which I've actually seen a little bit more often here on Random lately. And it sets this off nicely. It makes it look like a much more serious vehicle than bright yellow would have. And then we put bright yellow hubs on it because, hey, it's still Bumblebee after all, isn't it? But yeah, for the most part, it works pretty well. I like the look of this mode. It accomplishes what it needs to do. It makes him look more serious, much more like, he is a higher ranked soldier in the Autobot Elite Guard and needs to look the part. Now, there are some little weird spots to the deco. There's a little gap here that isn't painted, so the deco, the actual pattern, does not quite line up like it should, which is a little bit weird. And also weird is on top, they didn't bother painting in the roof light, because if you remember, the original was based on a off-duty cop car, which had a little siren that could stick on top. Well, in the original toy, this was painted correctly. Here, it just looks like a big lump, as if the driver hit a speed bump and crashed his head through, like a cartoon. Almost like these are in cartoons at some time. But yeah, for the most part, I like it. Form-wise, I'm a big fan of the vehicle mode. It's kind of like a little hatchback, a little Mini Cooper. It's just enough to avoid being a Volkswagen Beetle and getting into any kind of legal trouble, but it still gives you that Bumblebee vibe of a very squat, very round car. It really suits the toy. It really suits Bumblebee. That's good. There are some oddities as well. Now, the deco is pretty much nice all the way around. It's flat, nothing too complex since it's animated. But you got the silver on the headlights, the red on the taillights. But then you realize the spoiler wasn't painted, so it's the same translucent blue as the windshields, which is a bit odd, really. The windshields themselves look pretty bright here, judging by my viewfinder. In person, they are quite a bit darker and look more like, heavily tinted windows. More like someone, like a cop, doesn't want to be seen while riding in this thing. Well, for the most part, that's pretty much it. The only other thing I can really point out is the Elite Guard Autobot symbol with the big wings hanging off the sides. So, that's about all that is to the vehicle. So instead of going to robot mode, we will show you what these little accessories do. Now, if you remember one episode, he actually used some booster rockets, and that's the main accessory that his toy comes with. Here, in vast contrast to the original release, there's almost no paint on these whatsoever, except for the tips painted in gold. They're the same translucent blue as the windshield, however, because they're much thicker and there's nothing in behind them except more translucent blue, they show up a lot brighter, which actually makes them pop quite a bit, more like, Energon rockets or something. That I can imagine him going much faster here, because this is kind of a gimmick that requires imagination. And I think it makes a little bit more sense than just like a gun sticking up off the roof, as a lot of Transformers did back in the day. So, especially for Bumblebee, who's not known, or before Michael Bay was not known as a heavy warrior type, I actually prefer that quite a bit. So that out of the way, I think it's time to go into the robot mode here, and Oh, animated. I'm still such a fan of animated's engineering style. It's so much more like whoa. It's so much more intuitive. This is a good time to mention this toy at this point had been used both domestically and internationally quite a bit, so there is a little bit of mold problem with it. For instance, this ball joint, which is supposed to rotate all the way around, doesn't want to hold. So that's a little bit embarrassing. It's supposed to work like this. The ball joint's supposed to hold tight enough to raise that stem, which is spring-loaded, and then rotate it all the way around to create the back of the leg. Unless the ball joint isn't strong enough to do that. Okay, so we will separate this out and bring all of this big section that used to be the front all the way to the back. And that function alone mostly gives us our robot mode, but we will give it just a little bit more here. Of course we will, because it's not fully formed yet. The back goes together like so, and Hang on. Actually, let me get the arms out of the way first. There's a way this goes. I'm not screwing this up, I swear. Stop doing that. You are making me look bad. I'm good enough at that myself. I don't need your help. Okay, so we get that out. We rotate the hands out from the base of the arms like so. Just the head a little bit. And we'll bring the back pieces together and so. That is our Bumblebee in his proper robot mode. Now you kind of see where the color scheme comes from. In robot mode, he looks much more like our stealth Bumblebee style repaints, where yellow is flipped to black and black is flipped to yellow. Same colors, so kids can still identify that yes, this is Bumblebee, but still different enough to give it a new feel and appearance and give him a much more serious look to him. The Elite Guard version here, because of the gold, actually does do that a little bit better, but, you know, he still carries that stealth Bumblebee look to him. We take a look at the head. Animated was so good with its head sculpts. They are so expressive and so good in accuracy to the cartoon. I love the little smile. I love the big bright eyes, and he's got enough classic Bumblebee in there for me to be very happy with the look of this particular character. Now, you'll notice he is translucent, light-piped. Big window in the back. The plastic is a little bit dark, so it actually takes a bit to get those eyes to light up. So that's, again, a little bit unfortunate. Again, I'm not a fan of light piping most times. Now, the nice thing about animated toys was just how smooth their transformations generally were, and how well they used the vehicle mode parts. Like you can see here the fenders making a really nice. Well, okay, there's going to be a car guy in the comments that's really upset with me right now. Quarter panel. Let's get this correct. It makes a really nice shoulder guard. This is what I mean by using the bulk of the vehicle to create the robot. This works. Using the bulk of the front to create the legs and the feet. This works very well. I really am a fan. And I even prefer this. Like, at least done this way, with the door permanently connected to the arm instead of like ball jointed or hinged off of it. It actually looks like a piece of the arm. So that I prefer again. So he carries a lot of little elements I like. And even like the kibble left over really isn't all that bad. You know, the back pieces come together like this to kind of shore up a little bit and form a solid back. And the heel spurs are actually formed by those extra vehicle shells. It's all very nicely engineered. It's a level of engineering you just don't see anymore. Very smooth and intuitive. For articulation, his head is fully ball jointed and it's on a hinged stem as well. So, very appropriate to animated, he does have a lot of expressive range he can accomplish. The arms have a hinge at the torso going back and forward, as well as a ball joint, giving them a good range of motion, though there's no bicep rotation, which means there's a few poses on him that aren't quite manageable. He does have a 90-degree elbow, as well as an extra hinge here from transformation that you can utilize if you so choose. Nothing at the wrist. He has a waist rotation, though on mine, something to be aware of. This faux windshield, which again, I honestly, when the transformation's done that nicely, I don't mind fake windshields, especially when it's really hard to actually get that proportionally to work with a character model. Mine does not hinge in or peg in correctly right here, so rotating the waist might cause this to pop off. So a little bit of warning for you when you're playing with it. Ball jointed hips with a good range of motion. The knees. Oh, I shouldn't have picked that leg to bend. The knees don't quite go 90 degrees, but they work all right. And they hyperextend a little bit to give you more of the animated look. You know, that backward slope to the leg. And the feet are also ball jointed, so you can tilt and adjust as needed for your posing pleasure. Bumblebee does quite a nice job at the deluxe size of getting some really good poses. He works quite well. Now for a little bit of added gimmick for you. For starters, he actually has his stingers from the show, which here are painted up with a little bit of yellow, which gives them a more serious weapon feel. They come together in the center, pegging together to create one solid stinger that he can fire. There's no like missile or anything. He just, you know, pew 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 fire. So that works well. And they have gotten a little bit of remold from the first version of the deluxe, which kind of forced them to stick out to here, but they fold in flush on this version of the toy. So it is a slight... So, in spite of a few weird things like, you know, this piece popping off and, you know, frankly, the hips on mine being a little bit loose, like there's a part in the pelvis missing, which might just be mine, I don't know. There are some molding improvements that make it a little bit superior to the original toy. If we want a little bit more of playability, the holes that we plugged these rockets into are still here in the back, so these can store on the back or be used as a jetpack, giving you a little bit more playability on the figure and a little bit more to do. Animated toys really weren't known for, you know, a whole lot of, you know, light up and spring-loaded gimmicks. You know, even in the larger figures, you had to go to larger toys to get lights and sounds and such. So a lot of the stuff was left to your imagination, and that led to these very solid, very well-engineered toys that didn't have to work around a gimmick. They could just be big, solid figures that look really, really accurate to the show. And that left you with gimmicks that, while maybe not the most exciting things, worked your imagination a little bit. And I really think that's important for a toy to do. So that is Elite Guard Bumblebee. Still one of my favorite deluxes from the line. And I do prefer this over the original color scheme, though I have the other Bumblebee mold with the big aqua submarine thing attachment. You saw me review that quite a while ago. I think this is a fine version. Like, if you're sick of Bumblebees that are just like blazing yellow color and, you know, just your typical stuff, you might want to seek this guy out. He's quite a bit of a different flavor and quite a good one at that. Man, for the days when this was the quality we got all the time. Outside of this stupid piece... never mind.